What is up, everybody? Welcome to Flock Forever. I am Chase Coburn here today, and we have breaking news out of the National Football League. Jesse Minter has been hired as the head coach of the Baltimore Ravens. We're going to break it all down, what that entails, what that means, and what maybe the future holds for the Baltimore Ravens now that Jesse Minter is the head coach and now that he is going to be running the show. We hope you guys do enjoy. We've been doing a lot of Ravens content over on Chase's Sports News on YouTube, but we're going to keep that more general sports based. If you want to see all Ravens content, it's going to be right here and on a few different links that I'm going to put in the description. Please be sure to follow us on all social media platforms. And we're going to be covering the Baltimore Ravens throughout the offseason and do some live shows, and we're really excited to kickstart all of that. But just kind of want to give my immediate thoughts, a few specific things, and then just kind of break down my overall thoughts around the Baltimore Ravens going out and hiring Jesse Minter. First and foremost, I do like the move for the Ravens. He wasn't my first choice throughout the entire process. I was thinking Clint Kubiak. Do you want to make an outside the box kind of arbitrary hire? But I the more I learn about Jesse Minter, the more I kind of fall in love with the idea of him being the head coach. I think the one pushback from Ravens fans consistently has been, should they have gone for an offensive coach to pair alongside Lamar Jackson? Frank Michael Smith put out the stat of the 14 most recent coaches that have represented their teams in the Super Bowl, a few repeats in there, but of the last 7 Super Bowls, the 14 coaches that have been a part of it, 13 of them have been offensive minded. So what that shows you is that we're moving in a trajectory in this league of being an offensive-minded, type of coach. Look at the Sean McVays, the Ben Johnsons, the Liam Cohens. Those are the guys that have had the most success. But I really do think, I understand the idea of wanting to go offense. I understand what it would do to have an offensive coach paired alongside Lamar Jackson and Bradley from the Charm City Sideline podcast, which I have, been a guest on at a time earlier in the season. He brought up a great point about how offensive coordinators are very hard to find, right? Teams like Detroit, Philadelphia, they continue to just cycle through these offensive coordinators. And then when you're not with an offensive head coach for the Ravens, could they possibly be doing the same thing? I say all of that, but I still don't mind the Ravens going with a defensive guy. In terms of, the Ravens going to have more of a fluctuation in their offensive coordination and offensive system, that's not a problem for me. I'm personally not concerned about Lamar Jackson's ability to work in different systems. He's won an MVP in multiple different systems under 2 different offensive coordinators, and we know that Lamar Jackson can run the ball. We know he can throw the ball. He has a really expanded skill set that he's certainly kind of harnessed and fine-tuned throughout his career. There was a coordinator a few years ago that went out and said they thought Lamar was a system quarterback. Obviously, that's ignorant in its own right, but he is, I think Lamar's most coveted trait is his adaptability. He could do so many things on the football field. And so whoever that offensive coordinator is, I think the Ravens can be assured that, okay, we have Lamar Jackson. And for me, when I was thinking the Ravens should go for an offensive-minded head coach, that was the only thing in my mind as well, was, do you just want to continue to amplify a strength, or do you want to try to fix a weakness? Because let's keep it a buck. The Ravens' defensive momentum, their confidence, the way that they've produced on the defensive side of the ball has not met up to standards. The Ravens are arguably the greatest defensive franchise in NFL history. And I think what the Ravens did here with this move is, instead of trying to go double down on the offense, they say, look, our defense, past 2 years since Mike Macdonald left from defensive coordinator to be a head coach at Seattle, it hasn't worked. They tried it with Zach Orr. It didn't work. But what you get with Jesse Minter is one of the best defensive coordinators in the National Football League. And time will tell whether he will be the play caller. I expect him to call plays like Macdonald has in Seattle, so the defensive coordinating position is not as important. But I think Jesse Minter can provide so much defensively. And I bring up the name Mike Macdonald because Ravens fans have spent the past year, missing Macdonald and regretting that their franchise chose Harbaugh, since they've watched the subsequent results and Harbaugh's gone and he has a new job, while Mike Macdonald is currently fighting for a Super Bowl and he's in the conference championship as a favorite. But I think, if you're a Ravens fan, you're not getting Macdonald back, but Minter is the next closest thing to Mike Macdonald. I think their career paths are extremely similar. Right? Minter spent a few years with Baltimore, so did Macdonald. Then they joined Jim Harbaugh at Michigan, came back and turned a bottom defense into a top defense in 2 years, and then took that head coaching position as a young, youthful presence. I think both of their careers are very, very similar. They have experience with this Ravens system, and they know that they can take a team that just feels like they're a step behind and take them a step forward in terms of that contention process. That is what Mike Macdonald has done in Seattle, and I think this Ravens team is even more talented. That is what Jesse Minter can do in Baltimore. And even more similar than their career paths, they both have a similar skill set in Minter and Macdonald. They both squeeze all the juice out of a player. They both maximize on the personnel they've been given, on their potential. Look at Mike Macdonald just in 2023, not even at his first year in 2022, what he did with the Baltimore Ravens. Jadeveon Clowney and Kyle Van Noy were great. Nnamdi Madubuike had a career year. Patrick Queen had a career year. Ronald Darby, Arthur Mollett, Brandon Stevens, these were the guys that were anchoring one of the top secondaries in the NFL. Geno Stone earned himself a big contract with 6 interceptions. They had 4 All-Pros, and they were first in DVOA just 2 years after they were a disaster in 2021. That is getting potential and maximizing on the potential of guys that haven't done great since. What's Brandon Stevens done the past 2 years? What's Arthur Mollett done the past 2 years? What's Ronald Darby done the past 2 years? Has anyone heard Jadeveon Clowney's name the past 2 years? What's Geno Stone done the past 2 years? There is an ability of Mike Macdonald to just maximize on the potential of the players that he has given. Jesse Minter does the exact same thing. Jesse Minter is very similar to Macdonald in that, look at some of the stars that he's turned around. He's revitalized the career of Odafe Oweh. He did nothing in Baltimore, but he had 10.5 sacks in 13 games in Los Angeles this year. Tui Tuipulotu had a career year with 13.5 sacks. Tony Jefferson was retired 2 years ago. He was a starting safety and a key contributor on this defense. That defense that was 30th or worse in most key defensive metrics 2 years ago, and Jesse Minter has made them a top unit in the NFL. He's very similar to Macdonald, and I think now the Ravens have him in their locker room, and they should be thankful that they found another version of Mike Macdonald to help anchor this team. And the other part of Mike Macdonald that was so coveted and what makes him such a great head coach in Seattle is his leadership. And the more I look into this hire for Baltimore, the more you realize he's just the perfect mold for this. He has experience with the franchise. He understands that Ravens standard, that flock around and find out mentality, the defensive aggressiveness, the confidence, the ability to rush the passer, stop the run teams off the field. Ravens haven't seen that the past few years. This has truly been an embarrassment to their predecessors defensively in Ray Lewis and Ed Reed and Haloti Ngata. It's really been an embarrassment. But I think also at 42 years old, he brings that leadership along with those defensive intangibles as a coach. He has a bold personality, which Baltimore leads. He's a culture builder, and the Ravens completely need a culture reset. I've been arguing with a few people on this. You need a culture reset, right? The Ravens the NFL is a game of standards, and the standard you set in the NFL determines the decisions you make. Some franchises, the standard is let's get in the playoffs, and mediocrity is accepted. And in some franchises, New England, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, there are a few others, mediocrity, Green Bay, mediocrity is not accepted. Mediocrity is at least, that's the floor. So when you do have an 8-9 season, chaos ensues. And so the standard in Baltimore is to be able to have a culture and a mentality that can allow you to contend for Super Bowls. That has been lost with John Harbaugh over the past few years, and Jesse Minter provides that. I look back at his time at Michigan, and he was waving Ohio State fans out of the stadium. Bingo! That is what I want. I want a Ben Johnson in that locker room. I want a Liam Cohen in that locker room. I want a Mike Macdonald in that locker room. This is a young man's game. You need a young, youthful leadership presence, and Minter is the right leader with the right mentality, and I think that will serve him well in Baltimore. The only thing that is concerning is, again, going back to kind of the offensive side of the ball. Obviously, Jesse Minter is going to do so much as a head coach, and the Ravens already have key blue chip pieces on offense, but they still need a creative offensive mind in there. There are a few options that are really enticing to me, and I'll break them down right now. I personally wouldn't mind going to guys who haven't been coordinators but are just brilliant offensive minds, like the Broncos pass game coordinator and quarterbacks coach Davis Webb. Former quarterback, he's 31 years old. The Ravens interviewed him for their head coaching position. I could see him as an intriguing candidate at offensive coordinator. Same thing goes for the Rams, brilliant pass game coordinator Nathan Scheelhaus, who Sean McVay has credited with a ton of their offensive creativity and success. Each of them are 35 years old or younger. They bring that youthful type energy. And again, the fact that they're creative savants, even though they don't have coordinating experience, it's a risk, but it may be a risk worth taking. In terms of guys who have done it before, I personally like Cliff Kingsbury, and he's kind of emerged as the favorite. There are rumors that Lamar wants Cliff Kingsbury in there, and I don't mind that. I think what Cliff Kingsbury does is, I think that the Ravens, they didn't lean enough on the run with Todd Monken. Todd Monken made Lamar Jackson a better passer. Lamar, one of the better deep throw rates in the NFL, and actually one of the higher in terms of he was throwing the ball downfield more than most quarterbacks in the league. And of course, Lamar is capable of that type of skill set, drop back, throw it 30 yards down the field. But for me, the Ravens offense becomes most dangerous when Lamar's arm and his deep ball is the secondary source of production, like in 2019 and like in 2023, or even in 2024, where Lamar was still throwing the ball deep, but he still had the running ability and he still had the yards after the catch and the yards per attempt, the efficiency in that category. I think a guy like Kingsbury can maybe get Lamar going with his legs again. I think he can get the rushing game going. I've seen what he's done in terms, with mobile quarterbacks and Kyler Murray and Jaden Daniels, and he's a good fit for Baltimore in that way. Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator for the Bills, I don't mind him either. I still think there's a possibility he could stay in Buffalo. Maybe he gets a head coaching job. But if Buffalo's going for a complete reset, maybe he takes a lateral position in Baltimore. He knows how to work with a mobile quarterback. Lamar and Josh Allen are very different, but also very similar in many ways. He knows how to have a team dominate on the ground and make a quarterback a secondary threat, which is a really great skill. You have a transcendent quarterback and you somehow take the attention off of him. Look at what he's done with Josh Allen in those 3 years too. Obviously when you work with Josh Allen, it's not rocket science on how you succeed, but he's been an MVP finalist, Josh Allen, in each of his 3 years with Joe Brady. And so I think that the 3 of the 4 years he's had with Joe Brady. So I think he can have great success. There are a few guys I'm against an offensive coordinator. I don't want Matt Nagy. The Mahomes in that offense has become a lot less productive and explosive. KC wants him out. They got him out, and I don't think that's an enticing option. I also don't like T. Martin. I think the Ravens should keep him at quarterbacks coach. I don't think in-house promotions are always the best. And I question whether or not he'll be able to provide enough for the run game. Obviously, he has a close rapport with Lamar Jackson, which is priority number 1. But the Ravens have other pieces on this offense that they need to utilize. And I don't know if T. Martin is going to be able to, we've been talking about maximizing potential. I don't know if Martin's going to be able to maximize their potential. But overall, look, Minter's coming to Baltimore, and I feel like there should be great excitement around this team. I think there should be great reason for optimism for this team. I think the Ravens, specifically in the Lamar Jackson era, have worked better with change. Look at how they did when they were able to change to Brian Billick. They won a Super Bowl a few years later. Look at what they did with John Harbaugh when they brought in Joe Flacco. That type of change. Even in the Lamar era specifically. Bringing in Greg Roman in the new offensive system, Lamar was a unanimous MVP. Scrapping that, bringing in Zay Flowers, bringing in Todd Monken, an offensive coordinator. Look at what that did for the offense. Lamar was an MVP in that season as well. Bringing in Derrick Henry completely transformed the offense as well. So this is a team that actually benefits from change. This is the biggest change the franchise has ever went through. The biggest, by far, and the most important, I believe, as well. And so 100% Eric DeCosta needs to have a killer offseason. He needs to nail the draft. He needs to revamp the trenches. He needs to add more playmakers to this team. This team underperformed, and that wasn't only a byproduct on the coaching, it was a byproduct on the system. But I trust DeCosta, and I think the Ravens hit a home run with this hire. They brought a guy who understands Baltimore. They brought a guy who is youthful. They brought a guy who will reinstill that type of defensive confidence and that type of defensive mentality in Baltimore. And they wouldn't have hired him if Lamar Jackson didn't think he can get the job done either. And so I think you're going to see Lamar and Jesse Minter have that strong relationship. Ravens fans, I think it's time to get excited because Jesse Minter is in Baltimore, and I think it completely changes the game for this franchise. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to this edition of Flock Forever. Stay tuned for more content coming up. And again, if you're not following us on all social media platforms, please check out the links in the description. Signing off, I'm your host, Chase Coburn, saying so long from Flock Forever.